General principles and processes of isolation of elements. See, we all know there are very few elements which exist in their native or in free state. Like we have noble metals like gold, noble gases, carbon, sulfur, etc. Other than these, what we find, all elements are actually existing in the combined state. Now, when we segregate elements, we know we have metals as well as non-metals, and most of the elements are actually, as we know in the periodic table, are metals. Now, these metals always exist in the combined state, and since they are metal, they are existing in their oxidized state, so they are to be reduced if we want them in their pure state. Similarly, the non-metals are always present in their reduced state, and they are to be oxidized in order to obtain them in the pure state. But we always relate this chapter with metals or metallurgy. The reason is because the non-metals usually can be whatever we are having, mainly the halogens, which are left out because oxygen, nitrogen as such, our gases are easily available, and they are actually obtained by the liquefaction of air and followed by its fractional distillation. Of course, we have a typical process to be involved in the isolation of noble gases, but then the other non-metals left out major are your noble gases, which are extracted mainly by the electrolysis process. So we are mainly left with the major part, which is of metals. Now that is why the major principles and processes involved in the isolation of elements deals with the metallurgy, the process of extracting metals from their ores. Now all the principles and the techniques which are used for the isolation of metals from the ores is called metallurgy. But before starting this, let me introduce you to the certain terms, like you need to know what minerals are. Now we know all natural occurring chemical substances are called minerals. Everything which is present around us is basically a mineral. Now from the minerals from which we can extract elements or specifically metals easily and profitably are called ores. That we also know. You must have done this thing in your junior level. So see, basically we will be dealing here with ores. Now, we know the basic idea, we know what we have, what basically is done to extract a metal from the ore or from an element from its ore. But what we need to concern is that we need to realize those basic principles which are lying behind this, those techniques which are used to separate them or isolate them. So in this chapter, we'll be doing those basic techniques and the principles. But before this, let me introduce you to one or more terms. Now these ores usually contains unwanted, undesirable substances which are called gangue particles or matrix. Now they are to be removed before reducing them to their original state, to their native state, to their ground states. So we basically separates them, and thus the process of metallurgy mainly involves 3 steps. First, concentration of ore. The second, we write down, the process of metallurgy involves 3 steps. 3 steps are involved in metallurgy. First is concentration of ore. Then what we do is reduction of metal from concentrated ore, and then in the end we have refining of the crude metal. So we basically, metallurgy involves the 3 steps. But before moving into the details of these 3 steps, let us understand in what forms the ores exist, or the elements exist in the nature or in the areas around us.